Yard by yard, life is hard, but inch by inch, life's a cinch. It's just the little things we improve on, but then we just do them consistently over and over and over again. That's where success is built so many times.
Joining us today is Mark Gottfried, former college basketball head coach and NBA scout, sharing lessons on leadership, resilience, and what it really takes to win.
Resiliency, consistency, courage, those things make up grit. If you can't bounce back, if you can't get up after a tough loss or a tough day or a tough moment, you're going to have a difficult time. I don't think that any of us can become the best all by ourselves. Michael Jordan was good, and then he had Phil Jackson as a coach. Kobe Bryant was good. Then he had Phil Jackson again with the Lakers to become great. We look at somebody else and say, I want to be just like them, or if they can do it, I can do it. But the reality is, I think it's just the process of becoming the best that each one of us can be in our own way.
Did you get any tough criticism or something that you felt affected you or your family during your career?
I had a lot of tough criticism as a coach. I think I won 438 games or something like that. But I also lost 292. When you're winning, everybody loves it. But then there are periods when you're not as successful. You're not as winning as much. And at that point in time, you got to brace yourself, because here comes the criticism.
For more than 3 decades, you have led teams in high pressure environments. What is the biggest lesson that you have learned in this time?
The biggest lesson is...
Mark Gottfried, welcome to the Sports Management Podcast.
Thank you. It's my privilege. I'm excited to be on your show.
It's great to have you on. First of all, if my research is correct, happy birthday when we're talking today.
How about that? How about that? Getting younger every day, Marcus. Just getting younger.
You're looking young and fresh. So great to have you here on the show. So for those who might not know who you are, you're a former basketball player and coach. And for more than 3 decades, you have led teams in high pressure environments. So looking back over these years, what is the biggest lesson that you have learned in this time?
Well, there's so many, Marcus. And, when you're coaching young people, and I had the privilege to coach college kids, mostly 18 to 20 years old, 22 years old, that's that period of life for a lot of us where we're still trying to learn a lot about what adulthood is going to be like. So, I've kind of put together, and I use it in my speeches a lot, this kind of a GID, get it done mindset. And I think for even the players I coached, when things get tough and things get hard and adversity will come, it comes for all of us. That's a guarantee. It's how we respond to that. And so I think the biggest lesson is just, hopefully helping young people learn how to respond when they find those most difficult situations they're in.
Definitely. So let's go back to the beginning. And you mentioned you were a player first. So can you talk through your basketball career and then walk ourselves up to where we are now?
I was fortunate, Marcus. My father was a high school basketball coach and then a small college coach, but I was always around the game. So I fell in love with basketball early on, and I had the opportunity to play for the University of Alabama, and I had a great experience there. I think I started over 100 consecutive games. I think it was maybe 98 or 100. But I got drafted in by the Detroit Pistons of the NBA, and I played basketball pretty much from the time I was very little until just after college, and then I transitioned into coaching. But I had a great experience as a player. Taught me a lot. Taught me a lot about myself in that, in those, again, how hard you really have to work to be successful, and the challenge you have to overcome. But, again, I had a great career at Alabama, and had a wonderful, wonderful, opportunity there with Detroit Pistons as well.
Fantastic. And I know that you said you moved on to be a coach as well, and you were coaching at UCLA under Jim Herrick. What coaching lessons from that period guided you in your head coaching philosophy later on?
Well, again, Marcus, there were so many, but I can remember one time when I was a very young assistant coach. I think I was 23 years old. And the head coach, Jim Herrick, we were heading to a practice. We were on the road up in the Bay Area. And I sat beside him on the bus, and I asked him, I said, what's the biggest difference between becoming an assistant coach and then becoming a head coach? And, I was waiting for this real elaborate, great answer, maybe some a wonderful thing. And he just looked right at me and he said, "It's lonely." And it was a reminder throughout my career when you get into those leadership positions sometimes, even as a CEO or you're running a company or whatever it may be, when you sit in that chair that's equivalent to being the head coach, it does become lonely at times. You have to make the decisions. Some of them are really hard. They're hard decisions. You got to hire people. Sometimes you got to fire people. It's not fun. But you got to get the right people together in your organization. But when I started coaching, Marcus, I had over 30 years of just amazing, remarkable things happen. There's a lot of winning. I tell people when I speak, Marcus, I was fortunate enough as a head coach. I think I won 438 games or something like that. But a lot of times people don't talk about the fact I also lost 292, and there's 292 nights where we didn't get it done. And those are the moments probably where you actually learn the most about yourself, about your team, and how you got to get better and what you have to do to improve. And so I had the good fortune of learning a lot of lessons.
I'm sure. And you said you learn more in losing. Is there anything that comes to mind right away that a big learning that you've taken from a loss?
I think what happens when, the equivalent in sports, you lose a game. Uh, it's sales, it might be you lose a deal. It could be anything. But in those moments, I think that's when we ask ourselves the question, what could I have done better? What did I miss? What could I have done that would have got us over the hump? And in coaching, when you're the head coach, you're always thinking about what could I have done to help my team perform better? Because somehow we came up short. And so, winning is fun, winning is great. We all love to win. Uh, but I do believe that a lot of times it's in the losses. If I look back over the 30 something years I coached, I think I probably learned more about resiliency, getting back up, changing your mindset, not allowing yourself to get down. You got to get yourself back up and be positive and have enthusiasm. So I think a lot of those times in the losses, it's where I actually learned the most.
Yeah, and it's this quote, win or learn, right? So that mentality. Um, yeah, you mentioned the, get it done attitude before. Also, grit is a word that you use a lot. Is that, a high performing habit as you see it?
I think grit, when we think of grit, a lot of times the first thing people think of is just being kind of mentally tough. And that's a big part of it. There's no question about grit. But, to me, when I talk about grit, the things that come to my mind, obviously I mentioned resiliency. If you can't bounce back, if you can't get up after a tough loss or a tough day or a tough moment, uh, you're going to have a difficult time developing grit. Another thing I talk a lot about is being consistent. And Marcus, I think the great ones in life, those people we look to and say, man, that guy's had a lot of success. Most of the time they understand what it means to be consistent, where you just show up every day, no matter what. You just show up and you're ready to go and you're ready to work and you're ready to get better. And then another one that comes to my mind is courage. Um, I think sometimes what separates those that have grit and those that don't have grit is, again, those that have grit somehow have the ability uh, to kind of stare your obstacle in the eye, and you're not going to shy away from it. You're not going to pawn it off on somebody else. You're not going to blame somebody else. You're just going to conquer it, whatever that might be. And that's a mindset. So, resiliency, consistency, courage, I think those things make up grit. And I think grit is important. I think all the great ones have it. They have grit. They have it. They've understood. They've mastered those tools.
For sure. My favorite example with consistency is Michael Phelps. I think he said that for 5 years he didn't miss a practice once. And then I mean, like if you look back at your own life, 5 years, you've been sick, you've been hurt, you've been feeling down, you've had birthdays or baptisms or weddings to go to, and not to miss practice once in 5 years. That's remarkable.
Yep. And Marcus, there's an old saying I use a lot that says, yard by yard, life is hard, but inch by inch, life's a cinch. And sometimes it's just getting a tiny bit better every day, but then doing that over and over and over and over again. You just keep doing it. You're not going to sometimes take these massive leaps, these massive strides every single time, that you're trying to accomplish something. Most of the time, in my view, it's just the little things we improve on, but then we just do them consistently over and over and over again. And so I would completely agree with you on that. That's where success is built so many times.
Yeah. Have you read Atomic Habits with James Clear?
No,
Okay, it's in Swedish, it's translated to the 1% rule. And basically, he's talking about building these small habits and how you can get 1% better every day and how that accumulates over time.
couldn't agree more. Couldn't
Yeah,
agree more. Wonderful.
for sure. Um, how was in your career, like you started as a player, then go into assistant coach, coach. I think you were in journalism for a short while as well. So how has this changes been like, and what learnings have you taken from your previous work that you can implement into the next one?
I think for me, Marcus, it's every opportunity that I've had, I've tried to, make the most of it. And there was a period for a couple of years where I got out of coaching. I worked for ESPN on television. And even in that time period, my goal was to be the best I could possibly be. So it really doesn't matter what it is I'm doing now. I do a lot of keynote speaking, and the same things apply. I want to stare my challenge head on. I want to make sure that I'm improving and getting better. And, I learned years ago too, Marcus, not to compare myself to other people. I think we do that a lot. We look at somebody else and say, okay, I want to be just like them, or if they can do it, I can do it. But the reality is, I think it's just the process of becoming the best that each one of us can be in our own way. I just have to be the best I can be. I can't do much more than that. And so for me, I don't want to get to where I'm comparing myself to others. I want to get to where I'm just trying to be the best that I can possibly be in every aspect of what I'm doing. And I think that's where you end up getting on a path for success because you're just trying to be the best you can be, no matter what.
Yeah. So now when your work is more towards keynote speaking and like coaching, are you taking the same type of mentality as, getting better as you did as a player? And how is that different from is it different in how you approach getting better now versus when you were a player or a coach?
Well, it's a little bit different in that, when you're playing, such a physical part of that too, where you got to get out and play and get better. I think now, what for me is the most important thing is even as I speak, and I speak in front of big crowds, small crowds, it doesn't matter. My goal is to always have an impact on other people, just like I did when I was coaching. So I'm always asking myself, how can I do that? And how can I really articulate things to where they're tangible for people, that they can walk out with tools. So it's not just a motivational rah-rah kind of speech when I speak. It's more about applying some tools that I think kind of all fall under the umbrella of the get it done kind of mindset. So it doesn't matter if I speak in front of 15 people or a team, or if I speak in front of 200. I did last week in Orlando, Florida. I still want to review what I did. I want to ask myself what I could have done better. And here's the thing too, Marcus. I think people another part of kind of the whole GID, get it done mindset. I tell people all the time that we also all have to be able to be honest with ourselves. Self-honesty to me might be the cornerstone for everything because if you're not honest with yourself and where we fell short or where we have to get better, I'm not sure there's a lot of growth that can take place. And so self-honesty to me, every time I talk, every time I speak, I want to be honest with myself and ask myself, what could I have done better? Where was I good? Where was I not good? Did I make an impact with people? And I'm always trying to evaluate that. And so then I have an opportunity to improve and be the best I can be.
Hmm, interesting. So you're obviously very articulate and well spoken. Do you have a coach for this or someone that you are bouncing ideas off, or are you watching tape of other speakers, or is this something that, maybe you're naturally good at and you're just improving as you go?
Marcus, that's a great question. I think for all of us in any walk of life, we have to find a small group of people that we really trust. And in that small group, in my view, there's accountability. And that accountability is that I can be vulnerable and get on the phone or get on a Zoom or get with somebody face to face, somebody that I respect, somebody that I trust. And for me right now, it's a lot of people that are in the speaking business, or thought leaders in general that have podcasts like yourself or other things. But I think we have to develop a small group. But, I always kind of say it's my A team. I need an A team. I need some A guys or gals that are going to be honest and say, coach, here's where you can get better, or consider this, or think about this, or hey, I watched one of your speeches and, here's a thought or a suggestion. I don't think that any of us can get where we want to be and become the best all by ourselves. I really don't. Even the greatest players that ever played the game of basketball, Michael Jordan was good, and then he had Phil Jackson as a coach who helped him become great. Kobe Bryant was good. Then he had Phil Jackson again with the Lakers to become great. All of the great ones had that. They've had people, whether it's their coach or people they respect, people that have gone out in front of them, and they tie into that and they want to learn from that. And they have humility. Like, I want to learn. I'm not there. I'm not the expert. I'm not perfect. And so for me, that's been important for me to always have that kind of small group of people that I can rely on for authentic, honest responses that I think then will help me on my journey.
I love that. You've spoken about also leading with clarity. How would you define that?
Well, I think that we all have to really decide what and be specific with what we're trying to do. Um, and somewhat stay in our lane. And that comes back to humility. For me too, Marcus, I think there's two traits. I always ask this question to people, uh, especially those that have children. And I always say to them, if you could breathe any characteristics into your children, what would they be? And a lot of times people say kindness and ambition and, I wanted to be good people. And all those things are wonderful. They're important and they're true. Those things are all true. But I think sometimes if I could just gift, my kids humility and empathy, just those two words, just humility and empathy, where number one, I'm humble. I don't think I have all the answers. As a matter of fact, I know I don't have all the answers. And then the second part is empathy for others, to really care about other people and not about yourself. And so for me, when I talk about clarity, it's being clear with those objectives right there. And when I speak or when I'm on podcasts or whatever it may be, and I host my own podcast, the Coach Mark Gottfried Show, it's the same thing, humility and empathy. And I think those two things will carry all of us uh, so far in life.
Definitely. And you have 5 kids, right?
I have five of my own biologically, then I've gotten married and I have three more. So we got a big group. There's eight of us now, eight children and two grandchildren. So now we have 10. So the group keeps growing.
Amazing. So are these the values that you want to breed down to your kids and grandkids?
There's no question that, as a parent or as a grandparent, you know, uh, and I don't know that there's a lot of things in life that give us as much joy as having children. And when you have children, at least for me, there's a passion to help my children the best I can to where they can become the best that they can be and they can have success in their life. And so, I think that's just been a constant with the five children that are my biological kids, and then the three kids now who are my stepkids, and where I'm trying to hopefully teach them, number one, by example, but two, also, teaching them what it means to have humility and what it means to have empathy. Because again, I don't know that we can be the best versions of ourselves without those two things. Yes, I want my kids to understand work ethic and honesty and having ambition and getting confidence. And there's so many things. But to me, the two that kind of sit at the top of the pile are humility and empathy.
Hmm. And you mentioned your father was a basketball coach, you were a basketball coach, and now I know that at least one of your sons are playing into basketball as well. Do you see a future coach in him?
I don't think that any of my children are going to go into coaching. I think my children, I think they saw the highs, when your team is winning at a high level, but they also saw the lows, and when you coach at a high level, it's like any leadership position, there's a lot of criticism, there's a lot of people that have opinions, there's uh the media can be really cruel at times, fans can be cruel at times because they have passion. So I think my kids have seen all sides of the coaching world, which they grew up watching. So I think they're going to be happy doing other things, and probably coaching is not going to be a part of it.
I see. The social media landscape has changed quite a lot also when it comes to the criticism. It's talked a lot about. I follow ice hockey mostly here in Sweden, and whenever something is happening in the game, the coaches or whoever, a player who made a mistake, it's so easy to just go after them on social media, and you have direct access to people nowadays that you maybe did not have 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah, and I use this example a lot. I think before social media and the internet and all those type things, there were games that were being played in sports. One team wins, one team loses. Um, the fan goes to bed. They wake up the next day. They go to work. They grab a cup of coffee. They talk about it the next morning. Hey, did you watch the game last night? I can't believe they did this or that. And they have opinions. What's changed is now it's instantaneous. It's right then. It's in the moment. And a lot of people, in my view, they use social media, especially in sports, but I think in a lot of walks of life, they use social media to vent, and they're frustrated and they're angry and their team didn't win, their team lost, or a player made a bad decision, or he made a mistake, or a coach, made some sort of decision. And I think it changes a lot of things. And I think that we, especially when you're in the arena playing, and it doesn't just apply to sports either. You can apply this to every walk of life, but when you're in the arena, you have to be very careful. And I used to tell my players this as well, in that we go to the message boards at times, and the compliments, they're somewhat intoxicating. We like them. People say how great we are. And, oh God, I love that guy. He played wonderful. Oh God, he's the best ever. And you read those quotes and comments from people you don't even know. You don't even know who they are. It's Bob from, Kalamazoo or somewhere. And but then what also comes along with that, there are a lot of negative comments. And a lot of times, when we dive into those, I believe eventually it somewhat affects your mental health. I mean, I used to have players that would get so down and they'd be so frustrated because Joe fan out there, some fan somewhere is criticizing them. And so there were so many lessons to learn in that regarding social media and how to use it to your advantage and use social media, but not to get caught up in all of that kind of stuff, because I think that becomes very detrimental.
Yeah, for sure. So, did you get any tough criticism or something that you felt affected you or your family during your career?
I had a lot of tough criticism as a coach. That was part of the turf. And a lot of it came sometimes from the media. And when you're winning in anything, but in sports, when you're winning, it's like everybody's riding the wave. Everybody loves it. Everybody's enjoying the wave. Uh, but then there are periods when you're not as successful. You're not as winning as much. And at that point in time, you got to brace yourself, because here comes the criticism. And part of it too, Marcus, is developing thick skin, uh, which I think some people can do and some people can't. but you have to develop thick skin and understand where the criticism comes from. Can I use the criticism to help myself? Is the criticism correct? Sometimes it is, and sometimes it's not. And so I think it's just about how you approach it and how you kind of use the criticism sometimes to even fuel you on your own journey.
Yeah, that you mentioned Michael Jordan, and when you watch The Last Dance, sometimes he was making up in his head that someone has told him something bad, but maybe they hadn't. It was just he needed something to fuel him to perform better. But as you said, maybe that works sometimes, but also, of course, if it's a lot, maybe it can affect
Yep.
you negatively as well.
Hmm. Yep. Yes, I agree.
Um, you also did a year or so as an NBA scout for the Dallas Mavericks. How was
Mhm.
that like?
I enjoyed it. Enjoyed working for Dallas. Mark Cuban, a lot of people know him. He's the owner of the Mavs, and he hired me along with a guy named Donnie Nelson, who was the president. But I really enjoyed it. My job was, to go out and evaluate college talent. I was a scout for the Mavericks, and I think there's so much to learn from that. And one lesson that I did learn, Marcus, is that you know our job sometimes in sports, obviously, when you're choosing the players you want to have on your team, but it's far bigger than that. It goes into who you hire as your assistant coaches or your staff, or when you have hiring opportunities. You know, it's easy to spot talent. I mean, in anything we do, the guy that, you know, in basketball that can score 30 a game and he's a great player. Um, and everybody in the gym can see that he's good. I mean, that's the easy part. But I think where you could really become good in evaluating talent is to dive deeper and try your best to learn more about the person, the player, and do they have grit? Are they resilient? What's their character like? Are they good with their teammates? It's like if you hire somebody, are they great with their staff? Are they great in the office? Do they uh, are they great with the esprit de corps? The spirit within the troops. What kind of teammate are they? When the going gets tough, what happens? Do they rise to another level or do they wilt like a flower? And so when I was with Dallas, the Mavericks, it wasn't just evaluating the players, it was also trying to dive deep into who they are. Because if you're going to invest a lot of money into a professional athlete, that guy's going to hit some tough times. And the question is, how are they going to respond? Do they want to be coached? Uh, do they want to become great? I think those are the things that we have to look for sometimes. And that's what my job was with the Mavericks, rather than just looking to see who the best players were.
Mm. So then that you cannot see from watching the game on TV. So how are you getting this research done to get this deeper insight in these players?
Well, I think everybody has their own ways, but for me, I would go watch, but I would go to practices. I would go early to the games. I would watch somebody warm up. I wanted to see how serious they were and how much intent they had even during warm-ups. I'd watch guys throughout the game. I watched them on the bench. I watched them interact with their coaches or assistant coaches. I watched their body language. I wanted to watch it all. And then I wanted to talk to everybody around them. I wanted to talk to the coaches, the trainers, anybody that had contact with them. And I wanted them to be honest with me and tell me. It was my job to be as thorough as possible so that if I write up a report on somebody, on a player, I want that to be as accurate as possible as who they really are. And I think sometimes a mistake we make in all walks of life when we hire people, even for me hiring an assistant coach, and people do it every day. They're hiring people left and right. And a lot of times we make mistakes. No, this is not a perfect world, but it's our job to do the best job we can in our homework to find out as much as we can so you can eliminate the risks. And hopefully you're putting the right people on the bus. Because if you've got the wrong people on the bus, you're in trouble in any walk of life.
Definitely. And as you mentioned, it could be expensive. These are very high paid players. And if you're making you're signing a player on X amount of years times a very high salary, and that doesn't work out, that's very costly for the club.
There's no question. And I think we see it a lot of times too, especially in sports. Some players they can't play through injuries. You know, they in the old days we go back and you look at the Michael Jordans and Larry Birds and in that era the Karl Malones and those guys played every night unless something was really really they had an injury that was really severe. And I think it's a pet peeve of the older crowd like myself. We see young guys now, they bump their knee and their back hurts a little bit and they find a way to sit out games and it bothers me. I think so many times you got to play through so many things. But again, when you're evaluating somebody, and in sports, there are players that they're injury prone. They're just always hurt. They can never play and you've invested a lot of money into that player. And so those are the things you hope to learn prior to, reaching out and hoping to sign somebody and bringing them into your organization.
Yeah. It's really interesting to talk about that with grit and what it takes to be a professional. I actually spoke about it today at lunch with some colleagues, why Sweden has so very few pro basketball players, considering we are like a sporting nation and tall, which is one of the, it's a benefit for basketball. And we have now Pelle Larsson and maybe one or two more. And then we had one more in recent times, but basically that's it. And if we take, for example, ice hockey, we are having almost 100 players in NHL at the moment.
Mm,
So
mm.
then, is it that grit that's missing? We were discussing also that compared to US, the amount of training hours per week per month is much lower. And it's really interesting to see, what makes that elite player.
Yeah. So many times, Marcus, it comes down to, what they love. And obviously, you have a lot of young people that are probably growing up loving hockey. They love it, they watch it, it's promoted in your country. It's like in Brazil where, soccer, or they would call it football. Young kids, young people, boys and girls, they grow up wanting to be that amazing soccer player. And I can imagine in your country with hockey. Um, and so a lot of times it comes down to just how much do you really love it? Um, because I think when you love something, that's the fuel really that helps drive you. And you look at those guys playing hockey. I'm sure they love what they do. They have fallen in love with the game and pursuing that and wanting to be the best that they can possibly be. And sometimes it comes down to coaching too. Um, I might need to come to Sweden and do some coaching and get on the court with some of these guys and when they're young and help them. And maybe you instill that love for the game. But I do think the love of what we do is what drives us many times to become great.
Yeah, that's an interesting take. And you mentioned soccer there. I know that you're an investor in Rhode Island Football Club, so a soccer club. Is that something now, there's World Cup is coming up in US and it's a little bit more focused on soccer. Was that the reason or where did you find your love for soccer?
Well, it's interesting in our country, the United States, soccer, we have more young people that play soccer than probably any other sport. And I would probably say that's in just about every state in the country. I mean, young people play soccer. It's an easy game for young people to play. But then somehow after that, within high school and college, our country doesn't put as much of an emphasis on soccer. And a lot of that is driven from television. What we see on television the most is NFL football, NBA basketball, Major League Baseball, and we don't see as much of soccer. And so a lot of times young people just kind of fall off. But the reason I got involved with Rhode Island Football Club is I do believe, especially in Rhode Island, in that state, there are so many young people playing the game and they love it. And where we're located just outside of Providence, Rhode Island, it's a very diverse community. There's Hispanics and Italians and African Americans, and they're all playing soccer. Everybody's playing soccer. And so I think the diversity in that area creates a great fan base. We have a great fan base. People come to the games, they're excited, they get excited about their team. But for me, I'm hoping that our team and that organization really blossoms and becomes the best they can be.
Yeah. So are you're how much of a stake do you have in the club? Do you have a saying in the decision making or
A little bit. We have a phenomenal founder, president. I certainly don't get involved with signing players. I don't know enough about young soccer players and who needs to be on the roster. But our leadership team has been wonderful. They are absolutely wonderful, and I think they've put together a great product. So for me, I may make a suggestion here and there, but I leave it to those guys.
so no scouting jobs for Rhode Island?
Not for me. I could do it in basketball, but probably not with soccer.
I see, I see. It's interesting with the soccer, as I said, in US because it's if someone can amplify something, it's the United States, right? And if if it becomes famous there, and also women's soccer that's growing very rapidly, it's interesting to see what happens now after the World Cup.
Yeah, and the World Cup is a lot of that's here, United States, and so there's a sense and a feeling that that is going to boost, the interest in soccer here in our country. So those are all things that we consider all the time as far as the game of soccer, and I'm hoping to see a big boom in the interest. And hopefully that results in more television, prime time opportunities because, right now soccer takes a back seat, like I said, to football and basketball basically here in our country.
I think that's gonna change, but we'll see about that.
I hope so. I'm rooting for it.
I'm a big follower of your Instagram page, and you're doing some call it recent events or something that's happened and popped up, and you're keeping very up to date in the sports industry at large. And I saw one post that you had about sports betting. What's your take on that? Pros and cons?
It's a tough one, Marcus. When it comes to betting, there was a time period where, you had to go to Las Vegas or you had to go to Atlantic City to bet and go to a casino. And, obviously, like DraftKings and FanDuel with the apps you have on your phone, it's becoming so easy for people to place bets. And, on one hand, that's the freedom that we have in our country, obviously. But on the other hand, I think it's becoming very dangerous. In college basketball, we just had close to 40 individual players that got indicted uh, for, influencing, some part of the game. And what happened was, Marcus, years ago, you would, if somebody was involved in a point shaving scandal, it usually was that they affected the outcome of the game. Who was going to win and lose the game, or how many points you would win and lose by. But what's happened now is you can place a bet on, whether a player gets 10 points and a half or over and under on a 10-point half. And I think it's becoming too easy, even for a player at times, to say, okay, that's not that big a deal. Let's say I can't score more than 10 points in the first half. Okay, I'll just have 8 points, but then in the second half, I'll just play really, really hard. And what we learned was it was easy. And, people were finding ways to influence college players to the point where they took that on. They might have made 40,000 bucks and they influenced a bet. They call them prop bets now. You can just bet throughout the game. I can bet who scores the first point. I can bet how many rebounds a guy has in basketball. I can bet in football if a quarterback completes an X amount of number of passes in the first quarter. And I think those are too easy for those that want to shave points to get to players. And so that's a slippery slope we're on. And I think it's a problem. And I hope we find a way to address it.
Yeah. No, I would agree with you, and especially in the players that don't make so much money, it's very, as you said, it's easy to make this pretty large extra money from a small action that could ruin their career.
Well, and we had, again, like I mentioned, close to 40 college basketball players in the United States that will be banned for life from ever playing college basketball again. again, and some of those guys are going to go to prison. And so it's a slippery slope. One other thing that bothers me a little bit, Marcus, is years and years ago, if you would have had 40 players indicted for gambling in college sports, it would be on the front page of every newspaper, every headline, every story, and it would stay there for days and days and days and weeks and weeks. It would be massive. But I think we're also in this age where, because of social media, things are coming so fast that it almost seems like it's a one-day story and it's gone. And you wonder and say, well, wait a minute, guys, that this is not good. Like, there needs to be a message sent for the younger players and the younger people to understand that's not acceptable. And there's a punishment, and it's massive. It's going to be big. And so that bothers me a little bit, that it seems like the news cycle just every day we're on to something else,
Yeah.
and we forgot about what happened yesterday. And this is one I hope we don't forget about. I hope we again we find a way to make an impact that this won't happen again.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with you completely. And it's a tricky one. But maybe, as you said, maybe you should remove these type of bets that are so small or insignificant, but you can still bet on them and have these
Yeah.
more things that,
Yeah.
who wins and amount of goals and along these lines.
Yes, I would agree.
Yeah. Anything else in the sports world now that has caught your interest lately?
Oh, there's so many things that we had here in our country. Our college university football national championship, Indiana won last night. It was a fabulous thing. But here's one for me, I think, in the sports world that's interesting to talk about is, LeBron James. I think he's in his 23rd season of the NBA, which is ridiculous for a guy to play that long. And he's been on the top of his game forever, obviously, one of the greatest players ever. But we just announced the starting five for the All-Star game, and it'll be the first time ever that he's not in the starting lineup. And again, it's just father time. We'd all like to beat it. We'd all like to find a way to overcome father time, but eventually it's going to get us all. But he's had this magnificent career, but he is getting older, and he's not the same guy that he once was. And there's a lot of discussion here, obviously, about him and the career he's had.
Yeah. I don't know. Do you think he feels bummed about that, or he's
He's
happy that the young guys are coming up?
I don't know him personally. I've met him, but he probably bummed a little bit. But I think again, we all put our head on the pillow at night, and we all know where we are in life. And I am sure he realizes that he can't do some of the things he used to do when he was 25 or 28 or 29 years old. He's getting up there at 41 years old, and so your body. Uh, I tell people sometimes, I get out of bed in the morning and I walk to go to the bathroom, and somehow my feet hurt, my knees hurt, and I'm thinking, what did I do in the middle of the night? My body aches like it used to not ache as much. But that's just father time. It's part of the turf, and I'm sure that he, like all of them, LeBron James, Larry Bird, Tom Brady, um Messi, everybody, they get older, and we just can't do what we did when sometimes when we were in our athletic prime.
For sure. And you're not playing basketball anymore. Now you have, moved on in your career. You have the keynote speaking and so forth. So what are you like now looking forward? Do you have any goals with your current work, or where do you see, the next coming years?
Well, for me right now, I'm focused on my podcast, the Coach Mark Gottfried Show. It's growing. I've had some amazing guests. And then obviously with my speaking, and my true goal with that, Marcus, is just to continue to impact people. I think that I was fortunate to have a wonderful career, but now it's really how do you impact people on a daily basis, and that's my goal from here on out. I play pickleball every day. I don't know if pickleball is very big in Sweden, but here it is, and it keeps me in shape a little bit and keeps me young. So all is good in Newport Beach, California.
Sounds great. Pickleball is not so big here. We have paddle or padel that some
Yep,
people say. I would like to play pickleball. I haven't played it, so I should try that for sure.
you'd
And
love it.
yeah, And I'm glad you shouted out your podcast. I found it way too late, and I'm trying to catch up. I saw that we had one guest in common. Adam Brenneman has been on this show as well.
Hmm.
So we'll definitely catch up on some episodes there, and I hope that the
Good,
guys and girls who listens to this will find your podcast as well.
good, good. Sounds wonderful, Marcus.
I like to end on a networking question. So, who from your network do you think would be a good guest on my show?
Wow, there's so many. I think one guy that I've had on my show, if you can reach him, is a guy named Jim Abbott. He comes to mind. Jim Abbott is a baseball player, but the great story about Jim Abbott is he was born with only one arm, and his other arm, ended there right below his shoulder. But he became a baseball pitcher and made it all the way to the big leagues in Major League Baseball, and eventually pitched a no-hitter as a New York Yankee. And I love the way he describes the story on my podcast. And I think he's a guy because he's overcome the odds. I mean, here's a guy that many people would have thought when he was young probably could never play baseball. I mean, you got to wear a glove on one hand and you throw the ball with the other. And he had to figure out how to do it with one hand. And not only did he do it, he rose to the point where he became a big leaguer. And so Jim Abbott would be one for me.
Fantastic suggestion. Mark, thank you so much for joining Sports Management Podcast and on your birthday. I hope you will spend some nice time with your family here later today.
Thank you so much, Marcus. Appreciate you.